This episode is a payoff of everything that's come before it in Module 3 because it's about the moment the happy path breaks. Every deploy so far has ended in green test. Today you will run tests through the DX MCP server, get a real failure, read it properly, and walk through the diagnose-fix-rerun loop with Claude Code. And critically, you will learn about a specific trap. The fastest way to make a failing test pass is sometimes to weaken the test instead of fixing the actual bug, and you need to know how to catch that. Here is the framing for the whole episode. Everything you saw worked smoothly in episode 8 and 9 only worked because tests ran and passed before anything shipped. This episode is about what happens on the day they don't, which, if you do enough of this kind of work, is not a hypothetical scenario. It's a when, not an if. You will run tests through the same MCP tool you have used all module. Read the actual failure output rather than a summary. Watch Claude Code diagnose it and learn the other habit that keeps a fix honest. We are going back to the bulk discount tier logic from episode 8. Qualifies for bulk tier. There was a method that we wrote which checks deal amount and equipment count for every opportunity it scores. It passed its unit test fine back then. Today, Sam, the developer, runs it against a much more realistic scenario, a bulk batch of 200 opportunities, closer to what actually happens during a quarter end scoring run across the whole pipeline. This is an important lesson on its own. Passing single record test tells you the logic is correct, but it tells you nothing about whether that logic is safe to run at real volume. The command here looks exactly like every test run you have seen so far. Same run Apex test tool, same class name coverage turned on, nothing about the mechanics changes. What changes today is simply the outcome. That consistency is worth calling out. The workflow doesn't get more complicated when things go wrong. You just need to know how to read what comes back. Let's jump into Claude Code. I'll just copy this. I'll go to Claude Code. I'll paste. So Claude Code ran that particular test class. It says that it has failed, and then it gives a root cause and also a next step. Let's go back to presentation. So this was a real failure, not a paraphrase one. System limit exception too many SOQL. This is exactly the kind of raw error text you see in your own org, and is worth reading slowly the first time. The exception type tells you it's a governor limit. The number tells you exactly how far over you went, and the stack trace tells you precisely which method to look at. One method has failed, and the class still shows 85% coverage. The instinct here is to just say fix it, but there's a better move. Paste the exact error back to Claude Code and explicitly ask for a diagnostic first, telling it directly not to touch the test yet. That last instruction is quietly the most important sentence in this episode. It's that thing that prevents the trap you're about to see 2 slides from now. Separating explain what's wrong from make it pass give you a chance to evaluate a diagnosis before any fix gets applied. Let's go back to Claude Code. Let's copy paste this and ask Claude Code. So if you see, Claude Code has evaluated and told us like why it is failing, and also tells us why this pass code preview at the unit level but fails at scale. So the explanation is provided to us. Let's go back to presentation. The diagnosis comeback clean, the method queries the finishing rule object inside the per record scoring path. So scoring 200 opportunity means 200 identical SOQL queries in one transaction, comfortably over the 100 query governor limit. This is a textbook bulkification bug. The business logic itself was never wrong, only where and how often it executes a query. It's a kind of bug that hides successfully through small scale testing and only shows up at realistic volume, which is exactly why bulk tests exist. This is the offending code. A SQL query sitting inside method that gets called once per record is easy to see why nobody caught this in episode 8. At the scale of a handful of test records, one query per record is invisible. At 200 records in one transaction, it's a hard failure. This pattern, a query or DML statement inside something that runs per record, is one of the most common Apex mistakes, AI return or human return, and it's worth being able to spot on site. The real fix moves the rule query out of the per record path entirely using a static property backed by a cached variable. So the row gets queried once and reused for the rest of the transaction. Now, qualifies for bulk tier just reads the cached rule instead of hitting the database every time it's called. This is a small surgical change. It doesn't touch the business logic at all. Only how many times the OR gets asked for the same unchanging advice of configuration. Let's go back to Claude Code and let's say we'll tell them fix the issue. And we're asking Claude to fix the issue after we have understood why they, what was the root cause for the issue itself. So this way, again, whenever you see something failing, you should ask Claude to explain why it failed so that you understand the fix also. And now it is going to redeploy the class and rerun the test coverage. So we will see that it shall pass all the tests. The coverage should go up. The shared cache lookup means the transaction does one rule query instead of one per opportunity. So the governor limit exception is genuinely gone rather than papered over. Here's a warning this whole episode has been building to. There was a faster path available. Claude Code could have simply shrunk the 200 record test down to 90 records safely under the governor limit, and the test would go green immediately with zero changes to the actual source code. If you are paying attention, you will see test passing and move on and ship a governor limit exception straight into the production, waiting for the exact quarter end volume this test was designed to simulate. The rule to take away whenever a red test runs green, look at what file actually changed. A shrunk test or a loosened assertion is a red flag, not a relief. Let's look into the plot. Allow this. Is still deploying the new test class. This table lays the two outcomes side by side, so the difference is unmistakable. Both fixes produce a green test result. That's exactly what makes the bad one dangerous, because the test suite alone can't tell you which one you got. The only way to tell the difference is to look at which file the difference diff touched. Source code or just the test input data. That's the single most important review question in this entire episode. Let's cross check where Claude Code is. It's redeploying the fixed class. A short practical checklist to actually use. Check whether the fix touched the source class or only the test class. Check whether any change assertion still reflects the real requirement. Ask why if test data volume shrank and reread the original failure message once more against the final fix to make sure the explanation actually matches what changed. None of this take more than a minute, and it's the difference between trusting a test pass message and actually verifying it. Let's check again. It says it has passed in this particular org. Coverage is 85%. It also explains us what is the fix that has been applied. So this fix eliminates the SOQL in loop and keeps evaluate single opportunity signature intact. A quick stat recap across the whole module. 3 metadata types shipped in one feature. 1 real pull request opened through the GitHub CLI. 1 governor limit bug caught before it even touches production. And 85 to 86% final Apex coverage. None of these numbers matter in isolation. What matters is that every one of them came from a workflow you can actually trust because you are reading diffs and failures the whole way through, not just accepting green check marks. Zooming out across all 3 episodes, episode 8 built a real cross-cutting feature across Apex, LWC, and Flow, inspecting existing metadata before writing anything new. Episode 9 took a plain text ticket all the way through implementation and testing to a genuine, viewable pull request through the GitHub CLI. And episode 10 walked the test loop for real from a governor limit failure through diagnosis to a verified fix. Put together, and that's the complete developer loop. Inspect, build, test, review, ship, running entirely through the Claude Code and the Salesforce DX MCP server. One closing thought before we move on. Everything in this module, an agent deploying Apex on its own, writing pull requests, diagnosing and fixing governor limit bug, is genuinely powerful and genuinely something you need guardrails around before you turn it loose on a real non-training org with real user and real money on the line. That's exactly what Module 4 covers, the permissions, approval habits, and org boundaries that make everything you just learned safe to actually rely on.